What's going on, people? Georgio Savvides here, founder of the Hip Hop Orchestra, as well as the host of the Hip Hop Orchestra Presents podcast. And I got a really exciting announcement to finally make with everyone, is that we have our very first official sponsor for the podcast. Now, they are an amazing company called Odin's Vote, who are extremely dedicated in bringing you the very best in officially licensed merchandise from pop culture. And when I mean the very best, I mean the very best. They provide things like keyrings, caps, t-shirts, to Funko Pops, to statues from all over, such as DC, Marvel, Disney, The Mandalorian, Harry Potter, music artists from all over the place, and they are ridiculously good. I've got a couple of things to show you on offer at the moment. This trust with their stuff is amazing. So, t-shirts, like I mentioned, like the one I'm wearing right now. It's got Rocky right here, which I absolutely love. Or, like I said, also got Funko Pops as well, 3.75 inches and 10 inches. I've got a couple of 10 inches right here for you. I've got Post Malone right here, and I've also got Biggie right here, who I absolutely love. These are so sick. Odin's Vote, trust me, they are amazing. Now, I'm going to leave the link below in the video right here, and also in the description below as well in all future videos from the podcast. But trust me, Odin's Vote are amazing. Website is www.odinsvote.co.uk. Get in touch with them now and start buying ASAP. But also, before I forget as well, I just want to say the biggest thank you to Odin's Vote for sponsoring the podcast. It means the absolute world to me. Thank you. And trust me, get in touch with them right now. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And peace. What's going on, people? Welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast. And today we are joined by a legend, absolute legend, lead vocalist and MD of the Legendary Odyssey, Steven Collazo. How are you, sir? You okay?
Hey, Georgio, how's it going, man?
Not too bad, thanks, man. How are you doing? You okay?
Yes, getting ready for the big grand opening.
Oh, brilliant. Hey, you got any plans for the rest of the year? Any shows
Yeah,
lined up?
catch up with all of the work I've missed for the last 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, how have you been coping the last year and a half? So far? Have you been okay?
Yeah, pretty much. It's been scrape at times. I had to sell my car and all that sort of stuff, but I've
Wow.
managed pretty well. And
Yeah,
the good news has been that I haven't had a lot of cancellations. It's mostly just been postponements.
good.
So I've got a year and a half's work ahead of me. So
That's
no complaint.
brilliant. Do you have many more? Do you have many shows lined up for the rest of the year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the diary is just filling up phenomenally. Well, a lot of stuff got moved into next year, this year and next year, and
yeah.
still stuff coming in. So it's
That's
fantastic.
that's brilliant. Like, what kind of things have you got planned for the rest of the year? What kind of shows?
It's all sorts. We got some theater gigs where we're headlining. We're headlining a festival in the Midlands, the mostly jazz, soul, and funk festival, I think it is. We've got a tour this year, a mini tour. And into next year, we're opening for the Four Tops and the Temptations, a big arena tour around
Wow,
the UK and stuff. So yeah, it's lots to play for.
wow. You must have so much to plan for then.
Yes, indeed. The logistics, that's next week's headache.
Yeah. Well, like, what's like the mind? Doing such big tours. Then, what's the mindset going into it? Then, do you like wake up like say certain time and finish like late at night, or what's the kind of logistics behind it?
Actually, the way it kind of works is uh, mostly I do the logistics ahead of time, figure
Yeah.
out where I'm going to stay, how I'm going to get from one place to the other. I try to use trains as much as possible where a gig is early enough because that kind of forces you to I don't know what it's going to be like post, lockdown and stuff, but
Mm,
mostly it kind of locks you into a schedule because you really do have to be wherever to get
mm.
wherever sort of thing. It kind of helps lock things up. But mostly once a series of gigs starts, you just sort of I just sort of fall into it really. It just sort of just ticks over. You check out most
Mm.
hotels 11, 12 o'clock. You catch your train 1, 2 o'clock, you get where you're going, or you get in your car and you figure, oh, it's going to take me 3 hours, 4 hours to get wherever, and you go.
Yeah.
And so on it goes, day after day.
Wow. Because
Yeah.
obviously you're the MD and lead vocalist of Odyssey. I mean, is this down to is mostly down to you to organize these like travel and hotels, or do you have someone else that you can work with as well to help you?
Well, I'm hoping this year to take advantage of this government program and hire an intern or two, give somebody some work experience and things
Mm.
like that. But as things have stood for the last several years, I have been the managing director, chief cook, bottle washer, babysitter,
Everything in
chauffeur.
one. Wow, you must have so much to do then, though.
It is absolutely, brother.
Yeah.
I'm at a point now where I've really got to start freeing up my brain a bit. We've got a new single out, and it's doing came out a month ago. But I mean, it's done surprisingly well. Usually, these things take a few months before they even start to gain any traction. But a lot of people have a lot of radio and stuff has really jumped on it, and consequently, more things are coming in, and there's just more to do. And it's like, listen, I'm one guy. I've just about managed by the skin of my nose
Yeah.
to now, and now with more things happen, I really am gonna have to get some help.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
the same way as you know, 'cause I run my own orchestra, as you know, and
Yes.
having such a massive headache. I'm like
Mm.
you now. I've done so much for myself, pretty much. Obviously, got hand places here and there, but doing the majority of the work yourself is a huge headache, isn't it?
It is absolutely, and
Yeah.
the headache. I need the headache to go away for a little while, at least subside a little bit.
Yeah, don't blame me at all. But
Yeah.
talk about interns though. Have you ever worked with interns before? Where we had it
Well,
in your
years
career?
ago, I had a recording studio, and you all had a different government in power then, where they really did. Well, I'll just say there was a lot less red tape involved with it, where you could have young people and
Mm.
I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years ago, there was this big thing where all of these, everything was media studies everywhere, every
Yeah.
university, every college, all the kids want to get into media,
Yeah.
So I was getting tons of emails at the studio. Oh, can I come and make a tea? No, mate, I can make my own cup of tea
Yeah.
perfectly fine, thank you.
Yeah.
But the really uh, top of the crop, or shall I say, the kids who seem really serious, I would have them come in for 2 weeks, over this summer holidays. And, I mean, I didn't really have anything for them to do,
Mm.
but I'd find things for them to do, create things for them to do, just to give them a sense of what it was like. And then all of a
Mm.
sudden, the red tape just got ridiculous. I had to have insurance for these youngsters. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm trying to help out here. And so after a while, I couldn't take on any more interns. I couldn't. And I really did feel bad about it, but, it was a regular working studio. I just about could manage insurance for myself, never mind a youngster who might, trip over a wire or something.
Mm.
And like I said, the red tape just became so much that I couldn't do it anymore. So I'm kind of glad now that going back to it,
Yeah.
and actually going to pay businesses and companies to take on these kids, because that's really the way forward besides college and university. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, but everybody is some people need to learn by doing, and
Mm.
the opportunity to do that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, was that for your Yank Productions that you put together?
That's right. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, you've done your homework.
I,
I'm leaving now.
I always do my homework, always. I was going to get to that later, but let's talk about that now, actually, 'cause I know you did it for what, over 20 years, right? You did that.
That's right. Yeah.
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 How did it all
20.
start for you?
Well, I was supposed to be here for 3 months
Yeah.
to do an Odyssey album, funnily enough. And I just started kind of helping out a little bit because I hadn't been working with the group. I mean, I've been with Odyssey since the beginning. I mean,
Mm.
it was a means to pay the rent. It's how the band got started. My brothers, my mother, my auntie, and Elijah
Mm.
that lived with us. But over the decades, as things, moved on and moved, away from record companies and all of that, I was sort of doing my own thing. So I sort of stepped back from the group for quite a few years, and then came here just to help do this album that hadn't, that Odyssey hadn't done. My mom, especially,
Mm.
come on, baby, come on over, help me do this album. All right, ma. So came over, got a visa and everything, and started working on this album and helping them out a little bit. Just doing road manager work, if you like.
Yeah.
That was 25, 26, 27 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And you're based in Reading now, is that correct?
Yes, live in
Yeah.
Cavish. Yeah.
Lovely. How is it for you there in Reading?
I quite like it. I mean, I chose here for the location purely because
Mm.
what I love about this town, I was talking about the trains and stuff. Like I said,
Yeah.
if I'm getting to a point now where I'm really leery about driving because I find myself on the road often,
Mm.
driving by alone, and I'm starting to worry as I get older that I might
Yeah.
wind up wrapped around some pole or something. Um, but from here, I can get a train to just about anywhere in this country. I mean, literally one train. I can get a train from here to Edinburgh, to Manchester, to Birmingham, to London. One train. I can go south. I can go to
Yeah.
Bournemouth. I can go to Southampton, Salisbury, anywhere, just about anywhere. The airports. I can get here, get there. I can get everywhere in this country from here. I love
Yeah.
it.
You love it. And
Yeah.
how do you find traveling? 'Cause I know that a lot of people find it quite hard. It like takes a toll on them, like physically and mentally. How do you find it?
It depends on the mode. I mean, if I'm driving, yeah, it's tiring,
Mm.
definitely. Funnily enough, though, I prefer motorway driving to driving through towns and A roads and such. And I like driving at night, late at night, when
Mm.
there's just nobody out,
Yeah.
including the police. But anyway, um, but I like taking the train sometimes because especially if I'm going up to Scotland or long trip up north, because then I can actually sit, relax, get a table, and I can get some other things done, or just chill out and have a snooze.
Don't blame you. And
Yeah,
where were you based in the US before you came here?
I'm a native New Yorker, man. I'm from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn,
Back
amazing.
in the day, it used to be home of the body bag.
Yeah, I know, I heard that. Uh, oh, before obviously the pandemic, like, did you go back often, either
No,
for
not
work or
really.
for nothing at
Uh,
all?
most of my family, first of all, they left New York. I think I've got maybe a couple of family members left there now.
Yeah,
Most of them have all moved to warmer climates for the most part. Most of them live in Florida and North Carolina and places like that, much warmer. Um, but for most of my life, I lived in Brooklyn, in New York City, and
amazing.
then I lived in other places like Alaska of all places. I was there for a
Alaska?
year. Yeah, I lived in
What was that
Alaska.
like?
Interesting.
Yeah, you
It's
talk
one of
about
the most. It was one of the most beautiful places I'd ever been on the planet. And contrary to popular belief, it's very very cold. Yes, but
yeah,
it's a real gentle, calm, quiet cold.
yeah,
So you'll freeze to death and don't even feel it, don't even notice it. It's just so sweet and gentle. Next thing you know,
yeah. You
your arm is
froze.
falling off. And
Carl, I was going to talk about the coldest in New York and Brooklyn compared to Alaska, but then you move from cold to very cold. How long?
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny. They in Alaska, they tell people from the East Coast of the United States that we have to be particularly careful, like from Chicago and places like that, because it gets just as cold, because our cold comes from up that way anyway.
Yeah,
It comes across the country and hits us eventually. But by the time it gets to those places, it's brutal, beat you up cold.
yeah, I can imagine.
It's windy, so
Yeah,
you're much more ready for it and stuff.
yeah,
And then you go to Alaska and you think, oh, this ain't so cold because it's so calm and gentle. Yeah, this is 20 below, 30 below, but
yeah.
this is light stuff. And we're the ones who end up with frostbite.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, how long were you there for?
I lived there for just over a year.
Okay.
I went there to make music. I needed to earn some money. The little marriage was going a little south and stuff. I raised
Yeah.
some stepchildren and stuff, and I thought, well, I need to move on. And even though it's really difficult place to live in, especially if you're a man, because there are like something like 20 men for every woman. Needless
Wow.
to say, women are extremely fussy when they have that kind of choice.
Yeah.
So bless
But
them.
yeah,
Can't blame.
but you said you went there for work. I mean, what's your work process? What's your work kind of process then? Do you prefer working in like a very quiet environment with no distractions, or do you prefer having, say, lots of sounds coming in for inspiration? How do you like to work?
I actually don't have a set way to work. I can be quite the loner. Um, and yes, as you just described, I can be in my room by myself, just working on stuff, headphones. And other times, I'm quite the team player. I like the buzz. I like the input and output not too many people, but I mean, I've worked with bands, everything from bands to, like I say, just working with one guy to just working on my own and coming up with things.
Yeah,
So I don't have a set way of working.
yeah,
Depends on the job at hand.
yeah. But let's talk about your new single then. Congratulations,
Okay.
buddy, on the new single. When did you release it?
It came out May 6th,
Okay.
and you'll have to forgive me if I'm insufferably pleased with myself.
Don't blame you.
Why this is so special is because it's actually features Lillian Lopez, who, as a lot of people will know, was my mom and the
Yeah,
original founder of Odyssey. And these recordings were made over 20 years. Not it was the beginning of this album I had come over here to make. Uh, so we recorded these things, more than 20 years ago. And consequently, I got married, for a while here in the UK. So I was able to work here and stuff. And I started to take a more active role in Odyssey besides producing the album. And so we got to working and moving about and everything. And the album, as usual, is the case when you're a working musician, singer, whatever. A lot of times the studio projects kind of go to one side. You're out there making that immediate cash money. So time went on and nothing basically happened, with the thing. We've done some recordings, we've done quite a few songs, remakes of the old, some new stuff that my mom had written and I had written together. And the next thing I know, she was gone in 2012. She just passed away. And after that happened, I couldn't bring myself to listen to this material. I just couldn't do it. I'd come in the studio and fire everything up, and it was kind of weird in a way because it's not like I didn't hear my mother's voice every day. I mean, I walk into any Sainsbury's or whatever, and
yeah,
radio's playing, and I would hear one of our hits come on the radio, and I'd hear her voice, and
mm,
most of the time oh, hi mom,
yeah,
and just carry on. But it didn't really affect me that quite so much. But when I was in the studio listening to this material with just her by herself, I just couldn't. I could listen to a few bars maybe, and I'd have to turn it off. Lockdown. After I'd cleaned my flat for the 750th time that day, um, yeah, and I ran out of things to do and stuff to throw away and all the rest of it. I finally made myself come in here and really sit down and start to work on this material. And the surprising thing was that what I discovered was that I had never actually grieved when my mom passed away because the outpouring was so tremendous from all over the world, places I didn't even think they knew of Odyssey. Really? Uzbekistan? Are you kidding me?
wow,
I'm
yeah,
saying,
yeah,
uh, it was just unbelievable outpouring. And so, of course, I'm responding to all of this on the social media and messengers and WhatsApps and all sorts of things. So, in responding to everybody's outpouring, I didn't really stop myself. And then the work started back up and da da da, and then I'm back out to work. And so I didn't really stop in grief, except for the odd moment, maybe. So while I was in here during lockdown listening to this thing, I'm surprised my neighbors didn't call the authorities or something. They must have thought I was in here losing my mind. One minute I'm laughing, one minute I'm bawling, one minute I'm angry. All these
yeah,
stages of grief. God, what is wrong with that guy down there?
yeah.
But I got through it, and I've come up with some nice, I think. Uh, uh, I'll just describe it as old school meets new school meets old school. And
Love
that's
that.
basically the way I've approached the whole thing. So you still
Yeah.
have that Odyssey feeling, modern technology, kind of newish. I say newish because old school is the new school now these days.
Mm.
So I've managed to keep that old school feeling and everything with the modern touch of things. Still feels old school. So young and old, I think will appreciate this new single and new album, which I hope to finish by the autumn.
Amazing, because that is, I know that that kind of old school sound always makes a comeback, doesn't it? All the
Yeah,
time. It's like fashion,
yeah,
isn't it? The one it's like disco, then it's the 80s again, and then this and that.
yeah.
I mean, what's your thoughts on it, on that kind of disco era always coming back into the modern era?
Well, I think first of all, it's a wonderful thing because that means I'll be working until I'm 127 years old.
Yeah.
So I like that part of it
Yeah.
first and foremost. Um, but I think also, especially the late 70s, but mostly the 80s, and why that one seems to persist, although the 90s now. I still have to get used to it. I'm driving around London somewhere or something, and then I see a poster up and it says, old school
Yeah.
90s. And I'm like, old school 90s? The 90s was the day before yesterday. Until I stop and think, oh, actually, the 90s was 30 odd years ago.
Yeah.
So, it is old school now,
Yeah.
for somebody who's 20.
Yeah.
But what I do think is that the 80s is probably the cross between where the technology begins to develop, the recording technology, the instrument technology. That's just where it begins. But you still had the old school songwriting capability, the old school creativity, the old way of doing things, so to speak, where you build a song and then you build production as
Mm.
opposed to the other way around kind of thing now.
Yeah.
And so I think that it keeps coming back because that was the I think the point where as artists in the industry kind of had it right in terms of
Mm.
sound and in terms of groove and in terms of creativity and everything. So now we have all of this amazing technology, which, love it or hate it, sometimes I even sit here and marvel at some of the things I can do that used
Mm.
to take a
Yeah.
week to do. I can do in 20 minutes. So,
Yeah.
it is amazing. You can't say that. But I also know there was a time when I had that studio, I became a real gearhead and started just buying everything in the music magazine. Ooh, gotta have one of those, gotta have one of those. And I bought all of this stuff. And then you remember the DAT machines,
I
DAT
do.
recorder.
I do.
I had one
Yeah.
of those, and eventually they became obsolete, as these things do. And I thought, well, I really need to get rid of this now. But before I do, I need to transfer these DAT tapes, get everything off of them. So one day I was in the studio and I just started playing all of the stuff that I had done prior to having all of this kit, and started playing all of the old stuff on this DAT tape or these DAT tapes. And I was astounded by how big and fat and really killer it was compared to all of the later stuff that I had done with all of the whistles and bells and equipment and stuff. And it's kind of what made me think, you see, this is where we are now in the,
Yeah.
in the millennium and stuff. And that was the best example. I had much less equipment, but I had to really dig deep and
Yeah.
and and make the music happen. Now the music makes me happen, and all I have to do is push a
Yeah.
few buttons. It's done.
Definitely. It's so true because it's so much easier and quicker now, isn't it, with what's available for us? At
Yeah.
the same time, though, do you feel like modern technology has taken out that kind of warmth that the original vinyls had and the original music had in that era?
Yes, I have mixed feelings about that, I have to say. In some ways, I do appreciate what vinyl purists like about the medium. I'm sorry, I still like purity without a whole bunch of crackling and skipping, but I do agree that there is a certain something, a certain warmth. I have a computer and everything, and I use modern technology. But at the end of the chain, it still goes out through an old piece of junk.
Yeah.
Well, it's not junk in essence. It's junk if I try to sell it, but it's
Yeah.
quite a valuable piece of junk as long as I use it, and
Yeah.
it just gives it that warmth, that
Mm.
something that digital technology just can't seem to reproduce.
Yeah. But you're sticking with that disco era, though. I mean, what was it like growing up in the 70s, 80s, or when disco was at its peak, with obviously the Odyssey to the Bee Gees, Earth, Wind and Fire, Marvin Gaye, and all these incredible artists? I mean, what was it like to actually grow up in that era?
Well, for me personally, it was a tough time because at that time, New York City, as I mentioned, was a very dangerous place to work and live and work. In 1977, the city of New York nearly went bankrupt.
I heard.
So the schools, the um, public transport, all your services, everything was just it was just horrible. Police, there were, weren't enough police. Crime was ridiculous. Jobs, forget it. There were no jobs to be had, which again is why Odyssey even came to be formed in the first place. I'll share this with you. Is even the reason why hip hop kind of exists. I mean, it has always existed as an art form in the African American community anyway. But
Hmm.
this, what we know today, is hip hop and rap, and that even came to existence in New York because, again, at this same time, the schools, the budgets were being cut in our public, what we call public schools. The schools run by the
Mm.
city. So the first thing to go, as is here, the first thing to go when they need to find money is you cut all of these what they consider frivolous programs.
Hmm.
That would be music, drama, arts. That always goes first.
Always.
For a lot of us in the inner city, the only way that we could learn any music, proper music, or the only way that any of us could even have access to an instrument
Yeah.
was in public school. So once all of that got cut, show you the nature of creativity. Um, well, brothers were like, well, I don't have a guitar anymore, or I can't get access to even play on a piano at school or anything, but I've got a turntable and I have this other turntable. And that's kind of how that whole thing kind of started, just as a way to remain creative in the absence of musical instruments, of musical instruction, of access. And so that's what the disco era kind of brought initially, before it became the big boom and the big thing. Once I got into it, uh, then came this kind of, well, I can share with you as well that I'm in my teens when the disco era came out, liking to go out and party and everything. But of course, the disco era brought this how can I describe it? Well, we used to call it plastic, but you had to get dressed up. I mean, really dressed out up to go to the clubs,
Mm.
and they were expensive.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So you go in these clubs and there's all these people standing around, and men all dressed in Pierre Cardin suits and what have
Yeah.
you. It cost me $10, which in 1977, 78 was a hell of a lot of money just to spend to go in a place, never mind buying drinks or anything.
Yeah.
And all of these guys and a lot of the women were just standing around profiling, is what we used to call it.
Yeah.
Just standing there being cool. I spent all of this money. I've come out here to dance. I've come out here to shake my ass and sweat. Not stand around and be cool. But I always stuck out like a sore thumb in these kind of places. 'Cause here's the deal. Listen, if the DJ plays something I liked, I'd ask a lady to dance because you used to do that back in the day. You'd actually ask somebody if
Mhm.
they would dance with you.
Yeah.
And after she looked you up and down, checked your shoes, and tried to get a glimpse of the label on your suit, and
Yeah.
then told you no. I would go on the dance floor by myself. I just didn't care anymore. And then a guy at a warehouse where I managed to get a job, he was a gay guy. And he was always talking about this place called the Paradise Garage, which wasn't far from where we worked. It was a gay club. Now, I'd never, been in the midst of gay people or anything, but I didn't have any problem with them.
Mm.
Anyway, so you had to have membership to get in it and everything. And he took me to this club. And this is where the beginning of house and disco, and was really, really starting to gain this momentum in these gay clubs. It had its commercial aspect, as you know.
Hmm.
Some of it that you were hearing on the radio, and your Bee Gees and your Saturday Night Fever, and it was that side of it. And then there was this other side of it, which we now know as house and the UK incarnate. I call it garage.
Yeah.
Rest of it. But this was all going on in these gay clubs. And the first time I went into this Paradise Garage, first of all, the men, they were wearing whatever the hell they liked. I
Yeah.
mean, down to G strings, jeans,
Wow. Yeah.
everything that you couldn't possibly wear in these normal
Yeah.
quote unquote disco clubs. And there was that sense of freeness and that sense of nobody gave a damn. Nobody, whether you danced by yourself or you danced with another man, there were a few women that they would let in there. And even then, you could have a really good time with them because they were able to relax, knowing that the men in this place are probably not going to be trying to hit on me all night and stuff. So they could really let their hair down. Straight guy like me, I could always find the women in these gay clubs and have a good time because they also knew this guy isn't going to bother me.
Mm.
So that's what disco eventually began to represent to me, was this freedom, this sense of, let's just get in here. Let's forget all the troubles. Forget all the problems. Let's just come someplace. Never mind how we're dressed and what we look like, or what our sexual persuasion is, or what our race is, or any of that. Let's just come in here. It used to open on a Monday night, for crying out loud,
Yeah.
and go all the way through. And then I told you I worked not far from where this place is. Me and this gay guy had this same job, and we end up stumbling into work the
The
next
next
Tuesday morning,
day.
having been all night at the garage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And what was it like actually eventually when you were going to clubs and you heard, maybe like an obvious question, but what was it like to hear like an Odyssey track being played in the discos during that era?
Well, the first time I think I broke down in tears. I'll never forget. It was one of those other kind of clubs in Brooklyn, the suit kind of
Yeah.
places. But I was out with all my friends, and we were out one night, and it was probably getting towards New Year's, I think, or it was in the winter of '77, I'm pretty sure. And we were in this club, and of course, it's not like I hadn't already heard it. We had advanced copies of it, and been working on it with mom for all of this time. So, but all of a sudden, to hear it played in a club, and of course, I had already played it for all my friends and my cousins and everything. So, but I think they all, everybody just lit up, and there was my
Yeah.
mother's voice.
Yeah.
That was the first time. But funnily enough, there's a difference in I guess I'll say, the categorizations between the UK and the US. It's like the artists that you mentioned, Earth, Wind and Fire, and some of the others. Um, they had music, and Odyssey included. We had music that fit within the disco
Mm.
category, if you like. But in the States, we were not really considered disco artists as
Oh,
such.
really?
That's not really, no.
How comes do you think that could be?
Well, like I said, and I'm sure we'll get to this in a bit, but it's different over here, period. Um, I mean, disco is really a kind of it's almost a specific thing, more or less. There are variations of it only in the sense of uh, whether it's funky or more mechanical. I mean, you could say that Kraftwerk was a disco act, or
Mm.
Giorgio Moroder or Donna Summer. And
Yeah.
I mean, those are what we would consider more disco, and the Bee Gees, even for that movie, at least Saturday Night Fever,
Yeah.
were more what we would consider disco. The funkiest side of it was your Earth, Wind and Fires and stuff, and so we were playing up tempo music, but it wasn't really okay. Boogie Wonderland. I guess Maurice decided, listen, I guess we either get with the program or we get out the way. And Cool in the Gang and a few of the others. But if you go back, just before the disco era, I mean, these bands were already going
Mm.
and had already more or less had that sound, you know, uh, and it just fit anyway because you could dance to the stuff. That's the only reason I think the Brits put it in
Yeah.
a broader category. Well, if you can dance to it and it's from the '70s, it's
It's
disco,
disco.
so to
Yeah.
speak.
I mean,
Sorry.
that's all right. That's nice. Sorry. But talk about these other artists, like you mentioned, like Georgia Moroder and Crawford and stuff. I mean, did you get the chance to meet and also work with other artists too from that era?
Oh, loads. I mean,
Yeah.
and I've met or re-met quite a lot of them. For example, a couple of years back, D Train, for
Mm.
example, we there was this little hole in the wall studio that we used to record in on the side of Brooklyn that black people normally would not like to be caught in
Yeah.
after daybreak. I mean, it was an Italian neighborhood, and they absolutely did not want boys in the hood, in their hood. But we found this little studio, and this man, uh, he just had this knack, and he had really good equipment, and he had prices that we could afford, even though we had to travel to the other side of the borough to get to him. So D Train and Hubert recorded their first couple of albums, I think, there. And we were working in this studio. So I met D Train many, many years ago, just before he really broke, you know. And then I hadn't seen him again
Mm.
until just a couple of years ago. So
Oh
that's,
wow.
and so we were at this Soul something festival somewhere. And I honestly don't think he remembered me per se until I started to remind him of the bits of history that only you could only know if you had been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It's like, so he's looking at me now like, there's no way you could know that unless you were there, or.
Yeah.
But and Evelyn Champagne King, she was a
Mm.
label mate of ours. We were both on RCA Records at the same time. We went to her house for I don't remember, probably her 21st birthday or something like that. But we'd gone out. She bought this big new house out in New Jersey and whatever. She invited, everybody was there, and I think Hall and Oates might have made an appearance anyway, kind of thing. And his Kid Creole and the Coconuts and so loads. We were all just hustling around, and this is mostly before any of us were really, really turning the corner.
Mm.
We're just on the cusp of hitting it. So,
Wow, that's
and there's more. I've
amazing.
met even more since I've been here. I've actually met more on this side of the Atlantic than I did over there.
That's incredible. Wow, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
I and are you able to share some of your kind of favorite moments of that, or like favorite behind the scenes stories that you might have had, or any moments of that era and and now as well?
Well, let's see. There's
You must
a
have so
few.
many memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alexander O'Neill is one. Um, Edwin Starr, an earlier one. Edwin Starr had already lived here for decades, and I remember him from childhood. I have a cousin who's like the sister I never had, sort of
Mm.
thing. And we used to sit in her room, and they had these little box record players. It was just a little box with a speaker on it and a little turntable on top, and you fold the top down and everything. But we would sit in her room all day and just play records.
Mm.
And two of those records that we used to play were by Edwin Starr. It was War and 25 Miles, and we played these records all day. So imagine some 40 odd years later to actually meet Edwin Starr at some gig here in Britain. And, and I remember I don't generally get starstruck, but that kind of icon from my childhood, uh, that really kind of blew me away. And Alexander O'Neill was more of because his thing was I was already a grown man, but he was amongst my favorite. I liked all of the Minneapolis Prince spin-offs, Jam and Lewis, The Time,
Yeah.
Jesse Johnson, and Alexander. I just loved that whole Minneapolis thing.
Yeah.
But Alex was probably my favorite vocalist. Uh, and to actually meet him at a gig. And he was so, and I met him in Dubai of all places. We were on a
Mm.
gig together, and I mean, he just approached me like he, of course, he had met my mother, but I mean, he just approached me, like he knew me, and I
Yeah.
just that was just mind blowing.
That's
Absolutely,
wow.
yeah.
And now, obviously, being the MD and lead vocalist of Odyssey now, I mean, what was that transition like? Obviously, growing up, seeing your mother and your auntie, obviously the founding members of the Odyssey, to then take it over yourself and take it to where it is now. What was that transition like for you? Were you nervous or overwhelmed, scared, excited?
Um, to be honest, I was reluctant uh, because the Odyssey was never my dream as
Mm,
such, and even for my mom, it was never her dream, really. To be perfectly honest, Odyssey has always been and probably always will be a vehicle.
mm,
It was always a means to an end from its very beginning. From the very beginning, it was a means to pay the rent. It was 1977. There were no jobs. My mother had these three teenage boys not going to school, eating like men.
yeah.
Listen, you can play a little, you can sing a little, you can sing a little, you can do this, you can do that. We're going to find some work out here. We're going to, and so that's kind of how it started. My mom's greatest ambition was to be a songwriter.
Mm,
That was her real ambition. Just so happened that she could sing really well and just had this incredibly unique voice. But her thing wasn't to be a performing artist as such. I mean,
mm,
she was quite happy to do it, but it wasn't, her big dream. And mine was to be a producer. I really, that's my strength. I call myself a musician who can sing a bit,
mm.
or a singer who can play a bit, depending
Yeah.
on your point of view, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but my strength is in using the kit, is in hearing things, doing arrangements, stuff like that. That had always been my dream, and I always thought, well, Odyssey will be a vehicle towards that. My
Mm,
brothers, I'm not quite sure whether or not it was a dream for them or what, but none of us really thought that this was going to be the end game. This was kind of the vehicle, is the best
mm.
way to put it.
Yeah.
So as the vehicles going along all of these various roads with the record companies, and then the record company dropping us, and then more people coming in, managing and trying to keep keep the vehicle on the road, so to speak. By this time, I was pursuing my own avenues to try to, see, but always keeping a finger on the car,
Mm,
so to speak.
mm,
Make sure it didn't crash anything, but not so much being in the driver's seat. And then his mom, of course, was getting older. I mean, she was getting tired. It might be interesting to note that uh, my mom is a Grammy Award winner, but not for anything she did with Odyssey. She won a
wow.
Grammy for writing the title song for a Broadway musical, and that
Yeah.
was really what her thing was.
Yeah.
And why this album means so much to me now, this one, Taking the Reins, to answer your question, is that 5 albums that we did for RCA, uh, she got to write one song, only one song was ever published
Mm,
on any of those 5 albums that she wrote.
wow.
So you could say that I'm just finishing up this journey
Mm.
with these recordings that I have, of which she's written quite a few of the songs. And who knows what's going to happen? I could be ruining them for all I know.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, the thing is, well, love them or hate them, Mom. There you go. Now you've got your songs on an Odyssey album, because certainly, if not for you, um, this wouldn't exist. And the reluctance to take it over and take the lead, especially as she got more, because she died of cancer, so she was a
I'm sorry to
gradual
hear.
process
Yeah.
as she became more less and less able. And by the time she passed away, I just thought, my goodness, these, first of all, will never replace that voice. And second of all, even if I thought I could come anywhere near that, those are some huge footprints to fill, huge
Mm.
shoes. But I also, what made me decide to go with it anyway was that I was there all along, and the
Mm.
spirit of it, and everything. As a musical director of the live aspect of Odyssey for many years. I tell you what, if you really want a good laugh, you can go on to YouTube, type in Top of the Pops or TOTP, going back to my roots, 1981. And if you look to the right of your screen, you'll see this kid with a guitar and a big afro.
Yeah.
I have no idea who that kid is, but this was
I've
before
seen
I was
it.
born.
Yeah, I love it. It's incredible.
But
But
yeah, that's where
yeah,
it is now.
yeah. Can I remember you talking about actually that your obviously your mother and your auntie wrote some songs, and Nile Rodgers produced some of them as well. They were
Just one,
unreleased, or just
actually, and
one?
actually they didn't produce it. It's the
Oh, okay.
only song. He hates for me to tell this to people, but Niall and Bernard wrote it, performed it. You know, I mean, recorded the tracks and everything. They didn't actually produce it, and
Mm.
it's probably the only one in history from the Chic organization that they didn't actually produce.
Wow.
Yeah, and the name of the song is Together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God, I love it. Do you still keep in contact with Niall at all?
Not at all. I don't know what it is. We just this. I mean, it's a very cordial relationship, but
Yeah.
God, I would love it. I maybe didn't like my remake of that Together.
Oh
Sped it up
really?
a bit, and I don't know. I mean, he didn't say as much, but I
Oh
saw him
man.
at one gig, and I asked him because by that time the Chic organization was everywhere. I mean, everybody was becoming chic. I mean, David Bowie and
Yeah.
Ghana, everybody was chic, so
Yeah.
to speak. So I kind of thought that, they had sort of become a production machine and they were just churning them out. And by the time we got this Together song, um, I rather thought it was a bit of a throwaway, you know. And I mean, who could blame them? I mean, I'm sure RCA paid him loads for it.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought it was just a throwaway, probably one that he did and probably didn't even. So I asked him at this gig. It was in Glasgow, come to think of it. And I asked him, so do you remember that song,
Yeah.
Together? And he said, of course I remember. I mean, of course I. And he did the guitar like, and I was like, oh. I was pleasantly surprised he did remember it, but there was
Wow.
no further comment about it. So I thought, well, okay, he remembers it, but obviously either he's not proud of it or he's not proud of what we did with it. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sure everyone's proud of you though, because what you've done has been amazing. And obviously,
Thank
you came back again a few years back with Daft Punk Get Lucky, and it took off from there again.
you. Yeah.
But yeah, but talk about remakes though. How do you find it when other, because there's been artists that have covered obviously Odyssey's tracks. How did you feel about that?
It depends, I suppose. I mean, it's like anything. Sometimes, uh, and please forgive me, DJs out there who may be listening, but sometimes my definition of a remix or a remake
Yeah.
is 50 ways to ruin a perfectly good song.
Yeah.
That said, there have been some very creative things that I've heard some DJs and artists do. And like any song you listen to, you kind of divorce yourself from the fact that it's one of yours, or one that you've done, and you kind of listen to it like you do any song on its own merits. Oh, that's nice, or sometimes the odd remake I've heard where you've really done nothing to this. You've really literally just regurgitated it. You've just literally just put it out again pretty much as it is.
Yeah.
And I always wonder about that because I think, well, why will people buy your version if they can get the original and it's almost exactly the same, or
Yeah.
vice versa? So I
Yeah.
don't quite get it
I mean,
sometimes.
have DJs and artists ever come to you for your permission or ideas on the remake or remix, or have they
Well,
just
not the
simply put it
ones
out?
not the ones that I would like, like
Damn it.
Joey Negro or
Yeah.
some of these household names. No, I always have to go begging them, please remix my song, please.
Oh,
But yes, but there are a lot of, and it's very gratifying, I have to say, even if I don't always like the end result. Even with this single now, um, a couple of DJs, unknown
mm,
basically, but have asked, can I have a crack at it?
yeah.
And some of the results are not necessarily to my taste musically, um, but you accept that that's the nature of the beast now, and as we were discussing earlier, uh, a lot of old school is new school now with all of
Mm,
the sampling, and now it's almost like it's what I've noticed listening especially to the internet soul stations. There are a lot of lovely new remakes, I mean, where they have actually made an effort to put something else to the song without corrupting it,
yeah.
just doing something nice and new, changing the chords a little bit, maybe changing the lead vocal a bit, to make it individual to them. I
Mm,
love those kind of remakes.
yeah.
And and then there are others where they're just taking these tracks, these old school tracks, almost verbatim, or I can't always tell if they're sampled or if they've gone in the studio and reproduced, re had the songs replayed, the music, but and then just taking off, just putting a whole new vocal over the top of it. It's like, wait a minute, now you just stolen that music outright. So it happens, but yeah, I don't bother too much. And the other good thing about remakes, whether I like a particular version or not, is that any publicity, anything that, because invariably most DJs on the radio especially will reference the old thing
Mm.
or the old artist. So it's kind of free advertisement in a way. It may remind, the diehards, oh yeah, I remember this by Odyssey, you know. Or it might, because it's new, quote unquote,
Yeah.
to somebody who's 20 or 25, they'll think, oh, this is great. And then they'll find out from their grandparents, well, actually, this was out 40 years ago, and
Yeah.
here's the original version. And I'm gratified that we have this tremendous young following. I'm talking uh, young people in their 20s. I call them the kiddie gigs. No disrespect intended, but I'm old enough to be the grandpa in a lot of cases. But we do these gigs, a few of them, and I mean, there's one in Liverpool and up in the north, and a few down here in London and stuff. And the median age is 25. And some of these festivals in Croatia and some of these soul festivals and things that we find ourselves at, they're all youngsters, but they'll catch you on the side and they'll say, "Oh God, I remember your music. Me and Grandma. Oh God, Grandma again. Me and Grandma. You don't want to realize that somebody's grandma is your.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, we used to get up on Saturday morning and clean the kitchen to your music. I never get tired of hearing those old stories.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it's amazing. And
yeah.
do you have any favorite kind of memories or venues that you performed at? Because we saw some amazing places. Do you have any favorite places that you performed at?
Gosh, that's a tough one. Um, this is gonna sound really weird, but not a particular favorite place, but a particular kind of place.
Hmm.
Back in 2007, 2008, there was the credit crunch.
Yeah.
And needless to say, just like with this thing now, a lot of us got hit very badly by that. I got hit so badly by that, I had to get a cleaning job.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not ashamed to say,
Of course not at all.
you
Nothing
do
bad at
whatever
all.
you have
Yeah.
to pay the bills.
Of course. Yeah.
But also, I had to seriously start considering other kinds of work within whatever in the music industry. And so I hadn't done it in a long time, and I started doing your working men's clubs
Mm.
and pubs in England. And that, I have to say, was probably 60 thrills a minute. But I really enjoyed them, and only in the sense that, I mean, it did burn me out eventually, and I had to, like, oh gosh, I can't do this anymore. But I did enjoy them because, and my favorite memory of doing them is the fact that first of all you could look right in people's eyes in a way that you can at festivals and in arenas and even in theaters. You know, you're up high, and you know the nearest person is 20, 30 feet away. Now it's suddenly you're in this hall, and I mean this literally could be somebody 5 feet away from you, kids running all over the place. And that's also what I love about it is that in the states, in most states in the states, children can't be where alcohol is sold,
Mm.
can't even be on the premises. So we won't have an equivalent kind of thing, social club kind of sits environment where the child, the parents, and even the grandparents will be in the same space. Uh, Whereas here you don't have such a problem, and so here I was in this place where I'm performing before maybe three, four generations sometimes of a family,
Yeah.
all of them. I remember one time I was doing a Motown song, can't remember which one, but there was a little, I don't know, it could have been more than 4 or 5 at the time. And this kid knew the damn words better than I did to some
Wow.
old Motown song because he had already at 4 or 5 had been coming to this social club or British Legion or whatever it was.
Mm.
Obviously coming every week with his parents or
Yeah.
whatever, and hearing this music over and over again. So this child knew the words,
Mm.
you know, and
Yeah.
that to me was a specific cultural bond
Mm.
as an American living here that I got with the Brits, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's amazing. And that is
yeah,
such a lovely way to end the podcast as well. 'Cause I always have to finish on a nice positive message. So, Stephen,
absolutely.
I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really loved it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Georgio.
It's
Man,
an
it's a
absolute pleasure,
pleasure.
sir. Absolute pleasure. And where can people find you online, just in case?
Oh, I think it's at Odyssey, Odyssey, New York City. That's NYC. That's and the '80s band on Facebook.
Lovely.
80S band.
Lovely. But Steve, thank you so much again for today. It's an absolute pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, man. You
My
take care.
absolute
Have a
pleasure. You
good
too,
day.
man. You too. Yeah, take care,
Bye
everyone.
bye
Bye
now.
bye.